Hi, this is Tom Watson. Welcome to Uncivil Society. 2025 has been a really hard year for the U.S. nonprofit sector and for civil society more broadly. In very real ways, it's been a year of direct pressure, political attacks, funding threats, regulatory uncertainty, and a sustained effort from the administration in Washington to weaken institutions that exist to serve the public good. And yet we're still here doing the work. Let's start this segment by discussing something that often gets overlooked. The nonprofit sector is not small. It isn't marginal. It's not a side story. It's not an oh, by the way, of the last political year and the last difficult year that we have all spent in the United States. In this country, nonprofits employ more than 12 million people, roughly 1 in every 10 workers. It's a sector larger than construction, finance, or transportation. It includes hospitals, universities, legal aid organizations, food banks, arts institutions, environmental groups, faith-based organizations, and frontline human services in every community in this country. This is civil society. It's infrastructure, and it really matters. But in 2025, that infrastructure came under real strain. And I think this has been the biggest story of this past year. Federal hostility towards nonprofits, especially those working on civil rights, immigration, voting access, public health, social services, and general fairness to our own neighbors, wasn't abstract. It showed up in delayed funding, chilling rhetoric, legal threats, and attempts to delegitimize the work itself. At the same time, demand exploded. More people needed help. Fewer resources were guaranteed, staff burnout intensified, leaders were forced to defend their missions while still delivering services every single day, and there is nothing theoretical about that pressure. As we enter the last couple of weeks of the year, that the sense of burnout in the nonprofit sector among the people I speak to regularly, clients, colleagues, is very, very real. Yet across the country, I do think something remarkable happened. Nonprofit staff, volunteers, fundraisers, board members, executives, frontline workers all adopted a shared posture. That is, we're still here and we're still doing the work. I heard this, again, from people who I have worked with in the industry, people whose organizations I sit on the board of, some of my students in my class at Columbia. They all signal that quietly, relentlessly, without applause, without political involvement, they are still doing the work. And I could see that in the work that we all did. Legal advocates kept tenants housed. Community clinics stayed open. Mutual aid groups filled gaps. Foundations adapted. Some spoke out, not enough. Local organizations absorbed shock after shock and mostly kept showing up. Mostly. It's not easy. It hasn't been easy. But they showed up because the work was necessary, and they're in the business of trying to help other people. Resilience alone is not a strategy, however. What 2025 made clear is this: civil society can endure pressure, but it cannot thrive on endurance alone. The institutions that we all prize and that we all thought were part of the permanent infrastructure of our society in the United States are not as strong as we thought they were. Their foundations are not necessarily set on bedrock, and they could not necessarily face the headwinds that we all faced this past year alone, or as perhaps as strongly as they really wanted to. And in 2026, this sector is going to need a stronger and more coordinated response, in my view. We need more public solidarity. We need more assertive storytelling about impact. We need foundation leaders and major philanthropists, yes, including the billionaire philanthropists, to step up and defend the work, to defend institutions and organizations that are out there and account for 10% of the American workforce. We need more defense of the people who are doing that work and the democratic values that make that work possible, because nonprofits are not special interests. This is how society takes care of itself. This is how we have traditionally organized ourselves, especially since the Second World War, where nonprofit organizations do a yeoman's job in filling the gaps in our society and really provide the glue that hold our society together. Yeah, they're not perfect. No, they do not run themselves as if they are corporations. Yes, it's true. Some of their impacts are not measurable in traditional dollars and cents, Wall Street kinds of ways, but they're absolutely vital. So this past year has really tested our sector. I do think the answer to that test can be seen in the work that has been ongoing despite the stress test. The answer to me from our sector during this last hard year was we're still here. Now the question is whether we're ready collectively to protect, strengthen, and invest in civil society, to protest, to get out there and fight back, to see more voices step forward, especially for organizations that are serving the most vulnerable people in our society, the poor, immigrants, those who are too often victimized by bigotry in our society. Can we all step up? Can we face this next test, which is going to be political on the one hand, but budgetary on the other? The economy is not particularly strong. State budgets are being cut in response to cutbacks on the federal level. That affects municipalities, county budgets. All of this goes into a year that looks very difficult in 2026. So we are still here. There is some resilience. And I do think that our message is the work is not done, and neither are the people who are doing the work. Thank you.